Today, I'm here with Megan Hunt, and she has this incredible story about her daughter that I already know is going to be hard for me to hear. But when I looked you up online and I was looking you up on social media, I immediately got emotional. And anything regarding children is so hard for me. I love children so much. So I don't know how you've been through some of the stuff you've been through as a mother. But she came highly recommended from our beautiful friend Tiani, who we both love so much. We were just talking about. We love you, Tiani. Shout out. Would you mind telling me, first of all, your daughter's name is Rawkee.
Yes, correct.
Tell me what happened. Just start wherever you want in the story, but just tell me what happened.
So Rawkee was, it's hard to start into her story.
I know, I believe
I
it.
have my book, so that's easy for anyone that wants to check that out.
Let's show that really quick. Do you have that?
I did. I brought the author's copy with me. This isn't our finished one, but this is our book here. It's available on Amazon. This is my daughter. This was about a year after her accident.
Wow.
That's actually for you. So
thank you.
I'll tell you. So these copies, when we were preparing to writing a book is a whole big journey.
Yeah.
But when we had got to a little bit finalized script, she was like, "Can we print some of those? I want to give some away." And I was like, "Well, they're not finished yet, sis. We gotta work through the kinks, you know." And she's like, "Well, let's print some like that so that people know that it cannot be perfect and it's still okay."
Oh, I love that.
So you'll find a few little spelling errors and things in that edition, but we do have the finished copy available on Amazon. So her journey starts in the beginning when I had her. She was my second baby, and she was a surprise baby. Wow. We didn't know the gender of her, and the whole pregnancy was very different than my little boy. Not in a bad way, just it was a totally different experience. And she was born on New Year's. Wow. Fireworks were going off. It was a perfect entrance for Rawkee when you get to know her. And she came out just angry and fierce and like a warrior. And she changed our lives from day one. She was just very different. She had her own path that she was on. And I felt like in the very beginning of Rawkee's journey, I was just a guest. Yeah. I was just a guest. And that was an intriguing mindset for me to go into, having had my little boy first, who I was just in love with. Yeah. And we had this perfect relationship, and he was just like my little crowned jewel. Yeah. To have Rawkee, who was all her own. Yeah. She needed her space, she needed her time, and I felt like a guest on her path. And it was awesome for me that early in our relationship to start to navigate that we don't own these spirits. Yeah. We're gifted with them, but we do not own them. Totally. And that really started to create new momentum in my parenting game. And so when Rawkee turned 4, it was February 3rd of 2020, she was with her dad. I'm a salon owner, so I was in town, doing my day of work, and she was with her dad on our ranch. And every springtime we burn all the tall grass off the fence lines so that in the summertime, the cattle can see the paths and not get caught in the fence lines. So this is a routine thing that we do. And Rawkee's always been kind of like our little adventurer. I talk about all her backstories in the book. She always is just, she learns hands-on. She learns by being all in with all the senses.
She's got to try it herself.
She's got to be right there. Yeah. And so when they were burning that day, she was in the truck with my other baby girl at the time, Martina. She was 15 months. And Rawkee was like, "Dad, let me out. And he's like, "No, just stay in," because our ranch kind of sits in the bottom of a canyon, and so there's a lot of funnel for the wind can be very shifty. And so he kind of had known it was a cold, windy day, and he's like, "No, just stay in the truck. You need to be safe." And so when he was done burning, everything had kind of smoldered down. He finally was like, "Okay, you can get out." And she got out, and it was probably less than a minute that she had been out of the truck. He was holding our daughter Martina and just gathering up his tools, and he heard her screaming. And he turned around, and from where he was standing, she was about probably 10 feet away from him, and there was one clump of grass that he hadn't burned, that he'd kind of missed, and that had lit up in flames. So from his perspective, in that 3 seconds of horror, it looked like she was completely engulfed in flames.
Oh
And so
gosh.
he just dropped the baby, dropped his tools. He, went running over to her, like we're taught and conditioned from childhood, like stop, drop, and roll. He pushed her to the ground and started, hitting her. And he realized she's not actually on fire. She's melting. And I'm pushing her clothes into her. So she had actually been about 3 to 5 feet behind that clump of grass, but it was the heat of the, like when the wind blew, it pushed all the embers into her. So she literally melted. And so he, frantically tried to get as many clothing off of her as he could before it melted into her skin. So her burns are kind of like a patchwork quilt. They're in a lot of different areas. Her entire face was burned. Fronts and backs of both of her legs, tops of both of her hands, back of her left arm, and left rib cage up her back.
You said she was 4 at the time?
She was 4.
Oh gosh.
Yep. Yep. So,
And just not that this matters, but I have a 4-year-old daughter who was born 4 days after what you're talking about, and has that same Spitfire personality. So I'm like,
there's a whole there's a whole
seriously.
current of little girls that I really do think that there is a massive amount. Well, we know this. We know that there's a powerful generation coming. We know
100%.
that. But then
don't even get me started to deal with all this
You're like,
nonsense. Are you kidding me?
And they're being exposed to things with circumstances in government and society and politics, but also in actual physical ailments. These kids are going through things that we can't even comprehend. Not even an inkling, but they're powerfully doing it.
Oh, yes, they are.
They're powerfully doing it. And I do believe that it will be women that rule the world. This generation that's coming, there's powerful men. I mean, I'm so grateful for the men
We need to
in
work
my
together.
life. But these young girls right now, they have what it takes to set the tide.
Or ruin things.
Truly.
Right?
Yeah, truly. They have this powerful, powerful force inside of them. And the world needs that. The world needs women.
And they need each other.
I believe that, yes.
Sorry to get off path, but yes, they need each
Yes.
other. Sorry, go on. So then what happened? Sorry.
So I received a phone call. My husband routinely called every day because I would pick up my little boy, he was in kindergarten at the time. And so it was like that 1:00 hour. I knew my husband would be calling to check on his little man. And so I just routinely, I was with a client. I just kind of like handed the phone to him. And I instantly knew something was wrong. Like he was screaming on the other end of the phone, like, where's mom? There was an accident. And it was amazing how, I once heard the scenario, like if you have a woman will battle anything, like there can be like natural disaster happening and it's the women that show up and go to work. But if there's a mouse in the house, we are on the table. We can't do a mouse,
That is very
we
true.
cannot do that. But when it's real and it's serious, it's amazing how that nurturing side of us, that powerful caregiver inside of each of us shows up.
Yeah.
And I think I even shocked myself with how robotically I just went into action.
That's what I can't even fathom. That just seeing any child, especially your own child,
Yeah.
suffering like that.
Yeah.
Just oh my gosh, how do you Kate, tell me, sorry.
I mean, for me, I really think that in my own life and my own journey, God gives us the experiences that we need to build us up for what he's bringing. And so, it's in the details. It's in the tiny details. Every experience that I ever had in my childhood, in my early teens, in my college life, everything was bringing me in for this moment.
Wow.
And as I was telling you before we started, I had lost my twins, identical twin daughters, about 3 years before this. They would have been Rawkee's little sisters. Directly below her. And so the lessons that I learned during that experience, I really felt prepared me. That was the biggest fear of my life going into motherhood, was burying a child. And so having buried 2, I was prepared for any outcome at that point. I just wanted to make sure that I was acting in the way I needed to. And so I got in the truck immediately, and I knew with my history and a little bit of back history in medical, in my high school days and early college days, that was my path, was medical. And so I had just enough to understand, like, burn generally, if the initial burn doesn't kill you, it's the infection that comes from burn that will. And so my brain went into like sanitation mode. And so I knew, like, we have to get her into a sanitary space, because I knew he would have been in the farm truck, the dogs are going to be in there and all the things. And so I told him, meet me We live, 30 minutes out of town. And so I told him, just start driving, because you can't call, we're in a very small town. And even though our medical team does well, our first responders are incredible, it's faster for us to make our move than to call and wait for them to make theirs.
Yeah.
And so I told him, just start driving. Let's get her in my vehicle. It's going to be a little bit cleaner for her. We met probably at the, 10-mile, the halfway point. And he just kind of tossed her over to me, and he started driving. And
what was she doing at this point?
She was in starting early stages of shock. She was almost completely naked. The only thing we couldn't get off of her was her hoodie. And it had melted just kind of into the edges of her forehead and into her body. So we had left that in place, because as he had started pulling that, it was lifting skin.
Oh my gosh.
And so we had left that. She was, he'd taken his pocket knife and cut off as much as he could. So she was just naked in my arms.
Was she shaking and crying?
Her face was kind of starting to like swell and slough, a little bit. And it was amazing how she was just uttering like, "It's okay, Mommy. It's okay, Martina.
Oh.
It's okay, Martina. Don't cry. It's okay." And so she was really, even in that moment of complete shock, taking ownership of everyone else's experience and everyone else's feelings. And
when you first saw her and he hands her over, like,
I
just feel like I would crumble.
I don't remember feeling, I think that having gone through that experience with my twins, I had learned how to compartmentalize my emotion.
Wow.
And not block my feelings, but appropriately fill in the right moment. That wasn't the time for me to fall apart.
Sure.
I had to be in action. And I think that the one thought I remember the most was, I have to make sure my husband is okay. Because my husband, I am super mom. I love being a mommy. It is my greatest calling and purpose. But my husband outshines me every day. He is super dad. He is the love of my life, but the true love of my children's life. Like they adore their father, and especially Rawkee and Shay. Shay's my husband. He and her came with this special bond.
Oh.
And so to know that he had been there with her and responsible for her, I was so concerned that he was feeling all this guilt and all this weight of like, I made a mistake. And so I just wanted to take away, take my daughter, and not that he was unsafe, but take her. And so he didn't have to hurt anymore. Yeah. I didn't want him to have to hurt anymore. And so it was and then get her safe, And so we just rushed to the hospital. I remember like the hospital where we were in Kanab was kind of going through a reconstruction mode. And so we initially pulled up.
Kanab.
Yeah.
Kanab is tiny.
It's teeny.
Tiny. Okay, I have so many questions. How
we
they can
like pulled
in.
They weren't, and I knew that. And that's where I was like, I have to be hustling this thing. Yeah. And especially where I knew it was on her face, there's like major concern of airway closure. If she had inhaled, I wasn't sure of any was she internally damaged anywhere? I didn't have the time to do an assessment, which is another God thing, because I do believe that if I had been with her when the accident had happened, I believe that I probably would have taken her home and self-treated for a little bit. I believe that of myself, just knowing like I have a good skill set. I'm not that parent that's like rushing my kids to the emergency room for just anything. And I think that I would have taken her home, and ultimately that would have been her downfall, because we didn't know until a few minutes later, when we had her, hooked up and a little bit more stable, that her left lung was completely collapsed. And so not only was she burned and melting, but she's suffocating.
How did that happen? And by the way, God really is there. I love that you said that. That is so beautiful. Like, wow. So how does a lung collapse from that?
So when the push of heat hit her, that initial, it's the reaction to anything we breathe in, and it was that inhale of all of that heat and embers that it was so aggressive for her to breathe in to then scream, that it just totally collapsed her lung. So she was battling in ways I wasn't even aware of. But we pulled up to the hospital, and I remember jumping out and like pounding on the ER door because it didn't open. And the little receptionist, bless her heart, was like pointing, like, oh my gosh, like you got to go to the clinic entrance. And so I just was like, my daughter's naked. I am at this point like trying to push down the frustration, knowing that I'm here, but they don't have what they need to accommodate what we're dealing with. And so I just remember like sprinting through the hospital doors and just taking charge, just yelling, you know, I need doctors, I need nurses, running down the small hospital hall, getting her set up and stable. Cause up to that point, hadn't had any, I mean, my husband and I hadn't even exchanged eye contact hardly, you know? And so I
So your
felt
husband
this.
was there with you?
He was
Okay.
driving the truck. And so I just felt this urgency of like, I need to make sure he's okay. I need to make sure, you know, that mothering comes
Yeah,
out in you.
yeah.
Like, I need to make sure my baby who's like traumatized in the backseat, my little boy, you know, I need to make sure he's okay. My tiny little 15-month-old, she's freaking out because she's never seen us like this. And so there was a lot of messes to clean up, so to
Yeah.
speak. And I wanted to make sure that let's get Rawkee safe.
Yeah.
And I think as that first responder coming out in me, it was like you always focus on the most critical first
Sure.
and work from there. And so we got her in, we got her stabilized. I had an incredible support system, the best that they could in a small hospital. They tried to get life flight from Salt Lake, but it was a terrible, terrible storm that day. And so they couldn't get anything off the ground, and the timeline was too tight. And so they actually flew us or planned to fly us to Las Vegas.
Wow.
That was the closest burn unit that could accommodate. And it was just interesting how even in this moment of trauma, you know, in this intense, the even more intense than anything I had ever experienced up until that point, how peaceful I felt. And you know, they always say hindsight's 2020. You know, months and years after the event, having different people come forward with experiences that they had that day. One of the nurses that was present, she said, when you guys first came in, I mean, everyone was, this hospital doesn't see this level of accidents very often.
Yeah.
And so I think it caught everyone flat footed, and everyone was doing the best that they could do, but it was like no one knew what to do.
Yeah.
And so when we had first gotten there, I guess that I had came in and set her on the table in the room, and she was kind of sitting, you know, like I just sitting with her arms up and her legs out, just kind of sitting there.
Is she not crying or anything?
She was completely in shock at this point. And so, I mean, her body was she was just kind of frozen.
I mean, you think of burning
shaking.
a hand on a stove.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just
immense pain. And she was just sitting there, you know, with her arms out as if she was sitting in a large chair. And this nurse said, and I don't remember this moment, you know, I was busy doing whatever I was doing. And this nurse said she walked in and she saw two angels sitting next to my daughter holding her, because she said she shouldn't have been holding that still. I mean, here we're talking about a 4-year-old little girl with a facial burn. She should have been clawing at her face, you know, and she was just sitting there perfectly still. And she said it was just a split second. She said, and then I realized, like, oh, what are those people doing here? And then she said, you know, they were gone and we were back in motion. But there was so many spiritual experiences that took place through her entire journey that for me, I know it was meant to be. I know her.
Can I share something about that?
Yes,
that
please.
is so beautiful. I'm so glad you shared that, because that's such a personal part of it. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's like some people will hear that and go, okay. So, but, and I'm not trying to downplay what you're saying.
Yeah.
For someone like me, who I'm very, very logic based, if I didn't know some of the things that I know from my own life experiences, I'd be shutting everyone down who had something like that to say, because everything has to be data, everything has to be logic, and there's nothing else, you know? But I'll never forget when my baby was dying. She ended up surviving, but when she was in the NICU and she was dying, I remember talking with a girl that I knew really well. And this girl never shared these experiences, never anything. She said, I'm going to tell you something. She's like, I've been a NICU nurse, and there are literally angels in there. She goes, I know that sounds probably weird to say. She's like, I have seen things that are too sacred for me to even talk about. So I fully believe that.
Yeah.
And I know that that's real. And I think that is so beautiful. And I love that you just shared that. Sorry, go on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and it's really something that I think when you think about trauma and you think about these experiences that we're asked to go through in this life, there's only two ways to go about them. Either you allow that to consume you and you allow frustration and anger and hurt and blame to enter, or you take ownership and say, why would a perfect creator who loves us all so immensely, why would he allow even the most traumatic thing to be something that would hurt us, you know? Yeah. And so even if you shift your mindset that way, and if you start to look for the pain inside of, or the purpose inside of each pain. You know, I talk about this in my book a lot. Like every pain really does have a purpose, and it's inside that purpose that we discover our path, that we discover our purpose, that we discover why we're really here and what we're really supposed to be doing. And for me, it was, I always knew, you know, watching my little girl before her burn, I would often, you know, peek over the edge of her crib and wonder, like, who are you? Who are you?
Yeah, she's
Because
special.
I respect you, I love you, I'm your mother, but I don't know who you are yet.
Yeah.
And I remember probably on day 4 or 5, maybe day 6, when they actually woke her up from her coma.
So she was in a medically induced coma then?
She was, okay. Yeah. I remember like having this powerful moment of seeing her for the first time, when her body actually matched the spirit that was inside. You know, like we're talking, she came out this fierce warrior. That's who she was, but she came out in this perfectly gorgeous little petite body that was too good for this world, you know? And so now she walks boldly with scars for the world to see, and it matches this warrior inside of her who has literally fought battles, who's fought for her life, who fights every day for what she believes in. Now people see Rawkee for who she really is. They wouldn't have ever appreciated or respected her without her scars.
So when she gets in and a nurse comes in and then sees, you know, people, angels holding her arms up, what is the next step after that? Like what happens right after that?
So the life flight team arrives, and they, you know, we're trying to figure out what's best. We don't have the facilities that we need. It's really hard to gauge. Once the body goes into shock, it's kind of hard to gauge, like, okay, we've got to move quickly, but what is quick enough? What is slow enough, you know? And so we collectively made the decision to place her into a coma, to just keep her body calm, even though she was very calm. She was very calm, and that's what was alarming them, is she is really calm, and that's very scary. Her vitals were decently stable, but it was just, let's call this shot. And I remember feeling when we made that decision, like everything's going to be okay, even if the outcome isn't what I think okay should look like.
So at this point, are you still wondering if she's going to pass away?
I think that again, like I had said, I'd already crossed that bridge in my life as a mother. And so I think that the blow of that, you know, to maybe a listener that's never experienced that, they would think like, oh, that's horribly shallow of you. But I think that I was already comfortable if that was the outcome, because I had already
shows how strong you are.
passed through that. I had passed through that journey with losing my daughters before. And that's a journey. That's a massive battle. But I had become at peace knowing that I don't own these spirits, that I am entrusted with them and I am here to guide and direct them, but I don't own them and I don't own their path. I'm here to support them on that. And so I don't think that those thoughts really crossed my mind at that point. It was just, again, like making sure I'm, you know, keeping this flowing, keeping her safe, moving her in the next transition. Where is she supposed to go? So when we prepared to go on life flight's a journey for anyone who's been through that. I have nothing but highest levels of respect. That is a very hard position for a parent to be placed in. You have to pick. One person has to go. And you don't get to fit in the back. You know, I think we have this misperception of like, oh, the life flight is so huge and we can all just climb in there and be present. And it's not. It's tiny and tight and terrifying. And I remember, you know, I told my husband, I said, I need to be with her. And I just remember climbing in the front of the helicopter, and they, you know, put her, she's just teeny, she's a little tiny thing. And they just dropped her little body bag in the back, and we start flying. And it was such a powerful flight. I'll never forget those moments flying over the desert. And I'd always wanted to do a helicopter tour of Southern Utah. I mean, it's breathtaking.
Maybe not that way, but yeah.
But I was sitting there like, this isn't how I wanted to do this. This is not how I wanted to go about it. And I remember just feeling that's when I think I was allowing the emotions to kind of start to surface. You know, a little bit of nausea started setting in, and I could feel a headache coming on. And I was just like overwhelmed for the first time of like, what's even happening? You know, what's even going on right now? And I remember, you know, you could kind of hear it's really loud. You have your headset on. You're trying to like organize your own thoughts and follow on what's the pilot telling you and what's the back going on. And you can't turn around. And I remember finally just coming on the headset and asking, like, is she going to make it? Is she going to make it? I think that's when I finally caught up with myself and was like, but really, what's going on? And I remember them just, telling me, like, I don't know. I don't think she's going to make it. We can try to land in St. George. They don't have the facility that she needs, but we
They
might
said,
could,
I don't
like,
think she's going to make it.
yeah.
Oh,
And then immediately they're trying to solve it. They're like, we can touch down in St. George. They don't have the facility that we need, or we can try to push on to Las Vegas. But we don't know. And I remember in that moment, again, having lived through it once, waiting for that, like, that wave to hit me, that crash to hit me of, like, oh my heavens, like, how can this be happening? And all I felt was gratitude. It literally, in that moment, you hear that line, like, your life flashed before your eyes. Hers did. I was sitting there looking out over the desert, and I just started replaying every moment. And I realized how, again, powerful God is, because I had lived through the death of children, and that had taught me to go all in with the children that I had. And we, after losing our twins, we gave everything to the kids that we had. I mean, we shifted everything in our lives to make them at the forefront and to spend all the, we shifted our perspective on money. Money should be spent to create memories and moments, not to be saved and hoarded for another time. Build right now,
that.
And
Can I
so,
say something really
yeah,
quick? Sorry, and I
please.
don't mean to interrupt you. I just think, like, that peace that you felt is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
There's preparation behind that.
Yeah.
You may not have been preparing for that specific moment, but the fact that you were making decisions, I feel like on a daily basis, probably. I mean, I don't know what decisions you're making, but
Yeah.
you're not just gifted that when you're doing things you shouldn't be doing.
Right. I agree.
That comes with dedication to God, in my opinion. And that just says a lot about you. So I want to give you that compliment, because that doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
And that says so much. That's just amazing. Sorry, go on.
Thank
So
you.
then do they end up going to Vegas or to St. George?
We went to Vegas. I felt very strongly that what's the point of stopping,
Right.
and making this worse? Like, let's get to where we can get help.
Right.
If
Because what do you have
there's
to
help.
get in another one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if she's passing away, again, they're gonna try. They're gonna try to resuscitate, and if we resuscitate and had that happen, then we're not in a facility that can care for her. So for me, it was a no-brainer. We've got to go all the way. We got to go all the way. And I remember just playing, just riding on this immense feeling of gratitude, and just replaying her little life. And we kind of came up over, I mean, you literally, like, come up over a hill, and you feel like you're going to smash into this hill in a little helicopter. And we came up over, and we dropped down into Vegas, and they just kind of hovered the chopper, because she's so teeny, and they just kind of, like, shoved the little gurney or little bed out. And I just remember almost wanting to stay in this space that I was in, this spiritual space of power, to be in a space where I finally felt like everything that I had ever lived for was coming full circle. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to be the best mom I could be, and to be put in a situation where you just realize that the thing you created, your greatest creation, is now being taken from you, but you feel gratitude. That means that you've done a good job, that you're now being gifted this powerful feeling of, you did well. I'm so proud of you for taking such good care of this spirit. And I wanted to stay there. I wanted to stay in that space of success and peace and love, and that moment of last breaths for my little girl. Though I, at that moment, didn't get to experience that. I thought she was gone at that moment. I was sure that she had passed away.
Because she was not with her eyes closed, or what?
I couldn't see her.
Oh.
So she's in the back of the helicopter. And again, we had just barely, I mean, they were trying to set the chopper down, and they just shoved her out, and they were in the door. I could watch them go in the door of the hospital, and I was still they were still setting the chopper down, and I was trying to get unbuckled and throw my barf bag away.
So they hadn't even fully landed when they, wow.
No. And I'm sure if she had been an adult patient, they would have had to, but she's this teeny, she's a little tiny girl. And so I remember, I mean, I'm sure all of this was like less than 30 seconds, but I really, that's a sacred space for me. And it always will be that space where I came full circle with everything inside of myself for my child. And so I remember kind of not feeling in a rush. I got out of the helicopter and I, wandered inside. I felt like I was in a different realm, just really dislodged and unsure of anything. You're now in a space where no one knows you. You don't know anyone.
An entirely different
you
state.
think that your daughter is gone. I don't know where my husband is, because that's immediately, you go through trauma. You want your person, you want your spouse, you want your partner, you want that person that is the person that gives you ultimate support. And he was somewhere driving across the desert,
Did he know where to go? Like, were you in communication
Yeah,
with him?
so when we had left Kanab on Life Flight, he was heading to Vegas,
Okay.
on the ground with his truck. And so I remember just wandering into the halls, the backside of the ICU unit, and there was beds full of people. There was people crying, and doctors and nurses scurrying everywhere, and there was a huge commotion in the far corner. There was just blue bodies, scrubs everywhere, and I remember just kind of like walking in, and some sweet little lady set me on a bed and gave me a glass of water, and I just remember kind of just like feeling like this out of body experience of like, what's even going on? Like, I just want to go back to the helicopter. I was feeling good there. I don't know what's happening here. And all of a sudden I kind of came back into myself, and I realized like, oh, that corner, that's Rawkee. That's Rawkee's corner. And I started wandering towards that and realizing, well, if there's commotion, maybe they're trying to resuscitate. If they're trying to resuscitate, like, I want to be there. And so I just kind of wandered, and I remember everyone kind of partying, and I remember, someone saying, make room for mama. And it's still at this moment I'm thinking she's gone. And I walk up to the side, and all my kids are so teeny, but she's so teeny. She's this little bitty thing. I don't even think she weighed 20 pounds. She's this little tiny thing. And I remember she just was covered in cables and cords and all this stuff. And I just remember pushing my hand through and grabbing onto hers, and it was warm. And my heart just dropped. It was like, she's alive. I get a second chance. Not only did I just receive this powerful confirmation that I'm right on track, I'm right on path, I'm right on purpose, but now God's sending me that miracle we all pray for, that second chance. And she was just there. And I think that
Was she awake or no?
No, she's still in a coma. And so, for me though, it was just that powerful, like, here we go. We get to go again. We get to keep going. God is giving me permission to continue on your journey. Now I'm going to grab another gear for you. And I don't remember much of the rest of that day. I'm sure I probably just climbed right up on the bed with her. That's where we spent most of our time. We were in UMC for 9 days, I believe, 7 or 9 days. And then we transferred again to University of Utah Hospital, and we were there for 56. So it was a long journey.
Oh.
It was a long journey, but it was beautiful. It was packed full of, my book goes into every detail of this story. It was packed with highs and lows and lots of growth and lots of discovery and opportunities to progress in, every physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And it taught us a lot about ourselves. It taught us a lot about our daughter. We're still trying to learn about her. She's still surprising us every day.
She's now 7 or 8.
She's now 8.
8, yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And this, I didn't show the cover of the book, but this is this. Oh, and then look at that cute picture on the back.
Yeah. Now this one is a little adjusted, but it like our Amazon final. I think the back picture here is actually the cover we went with on the final edit.
Oh, so cute. And this is called 1,000 Faces.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Is this because of all the surgeries and stuff that are?
Yeah. I think that a lot of it came from that. Watching, for me, the journey of Rawkee's story is really understanding that our spirits aren't our bodies. They're just the vessel that holds us. And I think when you take this perfect little girl, she was so flawless. Just the most porcelain doll little person in the world.
I believe it.
And then you take her and you scar her face, and when she's handed a mirror, on day 6 or whatever day it was, to watch her boldly lean into that There was never a moment of like, I'm ugly or I'm, you know, there's never been that for her. Ever.
So happy to
She's
hear that.
just such a powerful, I mean, she gets more emotional when we go in for surgeries to remove a scar. She's attached to them. That's her identity. But that has taught me the greatest lesson of like, I mean, I've never had to experience a physical ailment in my life. I've never even broken a bone, you know? And so I look at my own self and I think, could I do that? Could I go through a burn on my own face and still boldly stand up and lead out? And that's where I have to check in with myself daily and be like, I don't know.
That's exactly
I
what I
don't
was
know.
just thinking.
I don't know if I could. And that's where I know there's still work to be done with myself, you know?
And she's such an example of the things that actually matter in life.
Absolutely.
So how is she doing now?
She's phenomenal. She's Rawkee. She doesn't, I mean, right here in the front cover of the book, her quote is, "It's okay to have a bad moment, but never a bad day."
Wow.
And that's Rawkee. I mean, she has these little moments that get her down. She usually dances them out. She loves dance, and she loves to dance out her energy and her emotion. But that's it.
She goes to normal school and everything?
I homeschool all my kids.
Homeschool.
Yeah.
Okay.
My oldest.
You're amazing, so of course you do.
My oldest.
And you're just writing books, no big deal.
Oh, it's one of those things when God calls you to do the work, you do the work.
Yeah.
You know, and He lifts you. He lifts you up, and gives you the strength to do the things that you need to do. And so with her journey, my oldest boy, he kind of ping pongs back and forth. He'll do like a year of public and then a year of homeschool. And he's my only, like, now I have my baby boy, but living with all the girls, I'm like, you maybe need some time with the boys. You take this year and go. But I am an advocate for homeschool. I think it's a healthy, safe place. Yeah. Especially when we talk about Rawkee and her journey of like, she started out on her path different than anyone else at 4 years old. The only thing that I see coming from a public school setting is bullying and manipulation of the mind and things.
Has she been bullied at all? Like
she
other
has.
places?
She's endured a lot of bullying, but again, Rawkee's perspective of herself and her identity is such that she sees when she's being bullied, it's always, oh, that poor person. That poor person doesn't quite understand, you know? And so she boldly tells her story. She boldly tells her truth. And she's a normal little girl. She has her moments. She has, you know, things. But she really has this superior mindset of just, why are we sweating about these little things? Why are we worrying about these little things, you know? I think that that's been an interesting journey for me as a mom. Her baby sister, Martina, is now going through those years that Rawkee went through burned.
Wow.
Now I'm going through that with my daughter who's not burned. And it's just interesting to cross those little bridges of normal life. And I don't ever want to say, I don't love the word normal because
it's different for everyone.
It's different for everyone. But I do think that it's been interesting to watch how differently Rawkee navigated, you know, the 5 and 6 year old growth of a little girl versus my Martina, who is going through these little things. And Rawkee always be like, why are you worried about that? Why are you worried about that? And
she's like, there are bigger things to do.
I don't know. But it's boldly allowed all of my children to step up to a higher level of thinking because of the experience they've gone through with Rawkee.
Do they say that there's any long-term consequences to her burns, or is it mostly just scars now? Or
so the thing with burn is it's a life injury. And so it doesn't, like, because you were burned, it doesn't mean you're never going to break a bone or you're never going to, like, go through other traumas. Right. It just makes those traumas that you'll eventually go through even harder because your skin is the largest part of your body. Okay. And so when you alter that in any way, it's like wrapping a rubber band too many times and then you have no movement, you know? And so for Rawkee, we're going through... we're on her 3rd year of reconstructive surgery. We have an incredible plastics team at Primary Children's Hospital. We adore her surgeon. He's incredible. And he's taken Rawkee places that no one thought possible. Wow. And so he's been able to, like, through tissue expansion and other procedures, start to put her back together. And give her mobility.
What a blessing he is too.
He is incredible. And I've always, you know, a lot of people will reach out and they'll be like, oh, she's looking so good. And I'm always like, thanks.
But she looked good before too.
She looked good before, but we're not in the cosmetic journey yet. Yeah. You know, she's in the functional journey until she's done developing, till her body's done growing. We're just focused on helping her bones grow straight. You know, some of the areas she was burned are constricting the growth of those bones because her skin can't stretch.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like her face, I mean, you look at this, you know, the picture on the cover of the book, her nose was collapsing at that time. And so we were losing airways. We had, I mean, her mouth was fused halfway shut. She was not able to eat a regular diet. And so we've only been focusing on, you know, functional and mobility. And I talk to her sometimes about cosmetic, you know, I'm like, what do you want to do when you get a little bit older? And she's like, I don't know. I'm not worried about that.
Her, she doesn't care.
So I'm like, when we get
had that kind of confidence.
When we get to that point, it'll be her decision and her choice, you know, of what does that look like for you on your journey. But yeah, Rawkee's taught me lessons that have just helped me reground in the importance of how we look at other people. You know, are we looking at who they really are, at their spirit, at their soul, or are we looking at the surface, you know?
This is so beautiful. I hope I meet her.
You will.
You'll meet her. Like she was just heaven sent. Well, of course, everyone is, but what an angel, and what a great mom you are, really.
Thank you.
And then you're taking this experience that is so difficult and you're sharing this with others. And I feel inspired today. I'm sure so many other people who hear your story will feel inspired and are feeling inspired. So thank you so much for doing this and for sharing her story and yours. I appreciate it.